Chapter 1007. It was just a way to end it. Wasn't it a pity? Lin Chintao's eyes followed Feng Yi's figure to the committee. He saw that Feng Yi was about to speak to the person in charge. There was a loud click. The youngster in front of the computer pressed down on his wrist for the second time. But this time, Bojiu didn't use one hand to relieve his stress because it wasn't allowed by the competition rules. "Brother Mo, do you trust me?" This was the young man's voice. It was light and deep, and it was transmitted to everyone's ears through the earphones. "I do." Two words were Qin Mo's answer. His deep gaze landed on the youngster before returning to his wrist. Bojiu pressed down on his hand, her gaze focused. "Just as you said, I will control Supreme Alliance's tempo. I will beat Zhao Sanpang until he calls me daddy. Don't worry." Qin Mo watched as the youngster spoke seriously. Her silver hair was messy and she was wearing the earpiece. Qin Mo suddenly relaxed his grip. All right. What was he talking about? Zhao Sanpang raged. Who was going to call him daddy? He realized that Little Spade wasn't going to let him off easily. Let's see if he doesn't chop him up. With that thought in mind, the Xiangnan team rushed out. Bojiu tilted her head, her silver hair covering her face. She was looking in Feng Yi's direction. Feng Yi paused. When he met her gaze, he broke into a smile. Was she telling him not to move? The person in charge glanced at Feng Yi, arching a brow. Is there anything on Supreme Alliance's side? No. Feng Yi's smile was appropriate. Even though the committee members were confused, he just stood there and didn't say anything about forfeiting the competition. Everyone knew Supreme Alliance was in a disadvantageous position. Their finances couldn't keep up. Moreover, there was only one defense tower left in the middle lane. It wasn't easy to control the tempo of the match. Besides, they had Xiao Jing, the man who never heaved a sigh of relief. In Hero, there was an indisputable rule. The person in control of the wilderness was the person in control of the entire game. Hence, Xiao Jing had never given up on farming. He didn't give Supreme Alliance a chance, suppressing them under the tower and preventing them from coming out. This was already an advantage. A new wave of team battles gathered in the middle lane as the match heated up. At this time, there were only a few defense towers left on both sides. Other than Xiao Jing, Luoluo, Bojiu and Qin Mo. Everyone had already died twice. If he died again, he would be disqualified. Hence, this three-man team battle was bound to begin. Everyone's skills were excellent. But it was obvious that Xiangnan's attack speed was too fast. They were so fierce that even though they were standing under the defense tower, Supreme Alliance didn't dare to let their guard down. Moreover, they still had troops. The audience clenched their fists nervously, feeling that Supreme Alliance was going to collapse in this round. Sometimes, one's intuition was just that accurate. Zhao Sanpang's ultimate skill interrupted Yao Yao's rain spell and took away half of her HP. With Zhao Sanpang's attack, the tank leaped forward and squatted on Shui Yao Yao's body. Goddess Luo moved, lifting the sniper rifle and firing at Shui Yao Yao. Blood filled the air, the screen in front of Shui Yao Yao turned gray. Supreme Alliance was really going to lose. Chapter 1008. Shui Yao Yao's death caused some of the fans to feel conflicted since she was the one dragging the team down. Someone patted their shoulders, allowing them to take a closer look. Some of the fans then realized that Shui Yao Yao had died because she had blocked a big move for Yin Wuyao. Otherwise, Yin Wuyao would have been the one to be eliminated. In that instant, the crowd couldn't describe their feelings. On the screen, Supreme Alliance's 5 members had been reduced to 4. This meant that from now on, it was no longer a 50-50, but a 40-50. At this point, everyone realized that there was indeed a problem with Qin Mo's hand. If not, his wrist wouldn't have been so swollen. Even so, he didn't let go of the mouse. He coordinated with Yin Weao's operation, setting up an electric formation to fend off Zhao Sanpang, who was about to rush in again. When an ordinary person's wrist was injured, even typing would hurt, let alone playing games. But Qin Mo's maneuvering and positioning were so precise that it was admirable. Everyone's gaze shifted to his face. That handsome face was now drained of all color, and even his lips were pale. But even at this moment, his voice was still calm. "Coco, return to the city to replenish your HP," he replied and retreated. Qin Mo turned, taking over his position. Someone frowned. "Doesn't his hand hurt?" "It can't be, you can tell from his expression." "But Supreme Alliance can't hold on much longer, the middle lane is about to collapse." Indeed, with one less member, how could they withstand the concentrated firepower of 4 opponents? 4 people. What about Xiao Jing? Just as the director realized the problem, he switched the camera angle. Everyone looked at the screen with a change in their gaze. Almighty Xiao is fighting the Beast King. The team attack on the middle lane is to prevent the Supreme Alliance members from coming out and to buy time. There are only 4 Supreme Alliance members now. With Xiao Jing fighting the Beast King and the Flying Dragon support, Supreme Alliance won't have a chance to turn the tables. The Beast King has less than 1/6 of his HP left, the outcome is set, but at that moment, a figure suddenly appeared from the bushes behind. A silhouette suddenly leapt out from the bushes behind him. Jungler's punishment, along with an ultimate skill, struck the overlord. Spade Z. When people say this name. Bojio had taken the lead and killed the Beast King, seizing the Flying Dragon's assist. Xiao Jing narrowed his eyes and then lifted the man in front of him. He was about to kill him. On the screen, the silver figure used the second skill to flick to the right, pass through the wall, and jump into the middle lane. Zhao Sanpang glanced at the map. With a click of his mouse, he spurred his horse forward and slashed his long knife towards her. However, before the hilt of his sword could fall, the figure used another leap skill and jumped into the wilderness. However, Luoluo, who had a strong sense of the game, was already waiting there. She set up her sniper rifle and shot it towards the figure. On the screen, flames rose. The young man held onto the mouse and swung it forcefully to avoid the missile. His fingers tapped on the keyboard rapidly and his body moved like the wind, allowing the flames to spread around him. He extended his long spear forward and the traces of the spear fell to the ground like a dragon's roar. Everyone in Xiangnan, including Xiao Jing, could only watch as the figure snatched their Beast King and successfully leaped back into the city. There was nothing they could do. In other words, even if the 3 almighties of Xiangnan worked together, they wouldn't be able to stop the youngster in the wilderness. All the Supreme Alliance fans were in a frenzy. After all, Qin Mo was the only one who could do this. But now, they saw the second one, Spade Z. Zhao Sanpang watched as the Flying Dragon soared into the sky, cursing at the back of his throat. Little Spade really treated the wilderness as his own home, didn't she? The match that seemed to be ending started to take a turn after Spade Z snatched the Flying Dragon. But it was only for an instant. Since he didn't need to fight the dragon, Xiao Jing went to the middle lane to help the team. With a second skill, he sent Coco flying. Zhao Sanpang turned back and slashed. In that instant, the Supreme Alliance's screen went dark. 3 versus 5. Without the sorcerer team control and long-range attackers. Even with the help of the Flying Dragon, Supreme Alliance couldn't continue fighting. The last defense tower in Supreme Alliance's middle lane was about to be destroyed. Everyone stood up involuntarily. There was another K.O. sound. Yin Weiyao was trapped in the defense tower. Luoluo rolled to the side and set up her cannon to attack. This caused the situation to sink further into the abyss. 2 verses 5. This meant that Supreme Alliance was only left with Qin Mo and Bojiu. The entire Xiangnan team was there. The flying dragon could hold on for a few seconds, but without the flying dragon, what would happen? How could the two of them fight against the 5 of them? Moreover, Qin Mo's hands couldn't take it anymore. Just as everyone thought Supreme Alliance was going to defend, the youngster moved her mouse. She leaped over the wall and jumped to the right. No one could see clearly how she did it. They only felt that her fingers were moving at a frightening speed. Luo knew that it was directed at her. She rolled instinctively. Zhao Sanpang leaped forward, wanting to give the youngster a critical strike. Xiao Jing did the same. But when he and Xiao Jing attacked, they realized that the youngster in front of them had instantly moved behind them. The person in front of them seemed to be a shadow. Everyone widened their eyes. Did I see wrongly? Why did I feel as though there were 2 spades in that instant? No, I saw it too. That's weird. Is it a clone technique? That's impossible. Little Spade's character doesn't have a clone technique. It's his maneuvering. One of the professionally sports players standing at the side trembled violently. The clone appeared because of Spade Z's maneuvering. His superhuman hand speed, coupled with his precise positioning, and even the use of the surrounding environment, were all controlled by him. F***CK. This was the first thought that flashed through Zhao Sanpang's mind. But before he could retaliate, a figure flashed behind them. The silhouette flashed behind them and stabbed at Luo, who didn't have much health left. KO. Xiangnan sorcerer reacted immediately. But when he activated his big move, he realized that the person had leaped back into the defense wall. Initially, everyone thought that was the end. Xiangnan sorcerer thought so too. But unexpectedly, in the next second, the figure leaped back, the long spear piercing the sorcerer's body. Without his big move, the sorcerer was vulnerable. In addition, Spadesy held a silver-white long spear in her hand. When the white dragon landed, the screen was filled with splendor. Very quickly, the special effects of the game started playing again. Double kill. But this time, Spadesy didn't manage to leap back. Because Xiao Jing had sent her flying into the air. At this moment, Zhao Sanpang reacted. He raised his sword, about to land on Spadesy, who didn't have much HP left. The audience couldn't bear to watch this scene. But at this moment, the white robe fluttered and the sword formation was activated again. Everyone from Xiangnan was slowed down by the electricity, including Zhao Sanpang. In front of the computer, the youngster moved the mouse. This time, Bojiu didn't jump back. Instead, she jumped behind Zhao Sanpang, to the right. What is he trying to do? Very quickly, the audience had their answer. He was at the edge of the electric formation. The youngster's fingers were tapping on the keyboard. Her speed was so fast that one could see the afterimage of her movements. Her godly movements looked as though she was widening the distance between them, but in reality, she had turned around and sent Zhao Sanpang flying. That kind of killing scene, the special effects that came out were dazzling. No one could even understand how the youngster moved. It was too fast, so fast that the shoutcasters didn't even have time to react. The numbers on the screen were broken by the sound effect once more. Double kill. Xiao Jing was still being restrained by Qin Mo. When he heard the sound, he wanted to dash towards the youngster. Bojiu turned. After sucking the blood, she didn't seem to have any intention of keeping her gun. A white dragon roared, striking the tank trapped under the tower. Coupled with Qin Mo's damage, everywhere the spear went, it was all reverse scales. Of course, Xiao Jing wouldn't allow her to succeed. He leaped forward again, striking her. Xiao Jing seemed to have a cheat code. He seemed to know which direction Bojo would jump in. He reached out with his long gun, sending her flying, cutting off her path back to the city. This time, Bojo was left with 1/6 of her HP. On the screen, silver strands of hair fell, covering the youngster's eyes. Just as everyone thought it was over, Bojo moved her fingers. Bojo moved her fingers and dashed into the bushes in the wilderness like the wind. He can't hide like that, right? No, he isn't hiding. If he isn't hiding, then what is he doing? Waiting for his big move. The speed of the conversation couldn't keep up with the pace of the game. In that instant, everyone saw the screen in front of the youngster flash. The next moment, a critical attack was launched, hitting the tank who was left with 1 drop of HP. Then, she retreated. The white dragon landed on the ground, the sound effect playing again. Instantly, everyone stood up. Including Hoshino, who was originally sitting in the VIP seat. In that moment, his gaze was darker than anyone else's. He looked at the youngster on the field, a rare ripple in his eyes. Double kill. The tank wanted to squash Spade Z. But when he saw Spade Z's face, Spade Z. But he didn't expect the youngster to be real. She moved like a shadow, and when he got close, the youngster had already dodged his attack, closing in on him. In that moment, his hand seemed to have been shaken. He forgot how to dodge. When he regained his senses, he realized that it wasn't that he forgot to dodge but that he couldn't. That person's maneuvering wasn't something he could dodge at all. He could feel it, but his hands couldn't keep up. Be it the explosive force or the person's speed, it gave him unprecedented pressure. It was as though the person standing in front of him wasn't the new player king. Chapter 1009. But even so, the youngster didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. The crowd watched as the figure dashed towards Xiao Jing. Even Rao Rong was shocked. He's going to a head-on battle. With less HP than Xiao Jing, he was going to fight Xiao Jing head-on. Everyone in the audience was shocked by this scene. That was Almighty Xiao. Even though Spade Z was indeed powerful, could he really defeat Almighty Xiao? That's it, little Spade, that's it. Lin Feng's voice rang out. Everyone's gaze landed on the youngster. He had so little HP. But regardless of whether it was Shui Yaoyao, Feng Shang, or Yin Wuyao, the trust in their eyes. It made everyone's blood boil. But Xiao Jing was Xiao Jing after all. He retracted his fingers and followed up with a critical strike, breaking the youngster's rhythm completely. Then, he raised his spear, like a sharp blade, causing damage wherever he went. The youngster's HP dropped, and he started dashing towards the wilderness, looking like he was escaping in a panic. Everyone's hearts were in their throats, hoping that Big Spade would survive. But everyone knew that he was Xiao Jing, and he wasn't someone that anyone could get rid of just because they wanted to. The youngster seemed to be aware of this. With a move of his fingers, he jumped towards the wild tyrant boss. Xiao Jing followed closely behind. But the next moment, something unexpected happened. The Tyrant of Darkness was triggered, and in that instant, the damage landed on Xiao Jing, who was following closely behind. The Tyrant boss, whose aggro had been pulled, stretched out its claws, and the damage was unimaginable. At this moment, the youngster had already jumped into the safe zone. Xiao Jing, on the other hand, was caught by the claw. He was knocked out, and his HP dropped by half. On the screen, the youngster's figure froze. Then, he jumped back and bit the claw. While Xiao Jing was knocked out, he raised his spear and summoned a white dragon. 3,000 rays of silver light fell. In that instant, Xiao Jing dealt his own huge damage. There was a loud crash. The youngster collapsed in the sky full of silver light. The fearless figure in the wilderness couldn't get up anymore. The young man let go of the mouse in his hand, and his silver hair fell down. No one could see the expression on his handsome face. Just as some of the fans lowered their hands in regret, another deafening sound effect appeared in his ears. 5. Kill. That's right, a pentakill. Other than the youngster, Xiao Jing was also lying beside the tyrant boss. In that instant, the cheers almost overturned the roof. Some people couldn't believe it and covered their mouths with their hands. That move just now, that was 3,000 knife cuts. Almighty Qin's 3,000 knife cutting. There were still traces of the white dragon's shadow on the screen, which were left behind by the spear. No one dared to believe it. To think that one day, someone could use Almighty Qin's electric array to execute the 3,000 knife slashes. All of the pro players knew that it was impossible. Unless this person could not only keep up with Qin Mo in terms of speed, but also accurate positioning and chemistry. It was said to be impossible because no one would be able to figure out his thoughts. But the youth did it. Snatching away the ruler, sending the DPS flying, counterattacking with low HP, 5 consecutive victories. This series of flips and miraculous maneuvers caused everyone's eyes to waver. Chapter 10:10. In a trance. Feng Yi felt as though he was looking at the noble god of war. Back then, Qin Mo had been like this too. Watching him play games was like watching a feast. All the blood that had once been extinguished seemed to be ignited at this moment. The audience in the arena was chanting the same name, Supreme Alliance. No one dared to say that Supreme Alliance would definitely lose this match. The reversal was like a miracle. And this miracle was brought about by the youngster. Xiao Jing's right hand didn't move away from the mouse. He looked at the countdown timer and said 2 words to Luoluo, defend. Everyone knew that this was the key for Supreme Alliance and also the key for Xiangnan. Luoluo had just revived and the rest had died 3 times. They didn't have the right to compete anymore. But it wasn't too late. After Luoluo revived, they still had a chance. This was the wish of every Xiangnan member. However, in the next second, a white figure broke their expectations. It was Qin Mo. Almighty Qin's hand is injured. Is he going to fight? The white figure with the dragon on the screen answered the question in everyone's mind. Luoluo waved the mouse. When she rolled out, the last defense tower of Xiangnan was gone. Qin Mo leaped over with the flying dragon and rushed towards the high ground. Luoluo narrowed her eyes. She lifted the sniper cannon and shot towards Qin Mo. As the spark scattered, Qin Mo moved his right hand and raised his left hand. He tilted his body and dodged the cannon. He cut from the left, his long sword slashing across and setting up an electric formation. Luoluo's speed was reduced but she relied on her agility to roll to the right. She raised the sniper cannon again and with a loud bang, it hit Qin Mo's body heavily. It seems like Qin Mo's hand injury has affected his operation. There are 15 seconds left before Xiao Jing revives. Qin Mo's strong attack shouldn't be able to take him down. Even with the help of the flying dragon, it won't be easy to break through the defense of the high ground. Looking at Qin Mo's operation, he might be killed by Goddess Luo. The shoutcaster's words seemed to be coming true. In the next second, Qin Mo was left with less than half of his HP. Even if the wyvern was still there, it couldn't hide the fact that his control had deteriorated. The youngster, who was still waiting to be revived, suddenly turned towards Qin Mo's direction. Only then did he realize that the wrist that was holding the mouse was obviously swollen. In that instant, Bojio tightened her grip on the mouse. She couldn't wait to revive and rush out. All the audience felt that it was a pity. This included the oldest group of people sitting in front of the internet cafe who liked to play online games. Everyone felt a wave of disgust in their hearts at the sight of such a lousy operation and his ID. After all, Chin Mo was different from others. It was the same for the fans of other teams. Almighty Chin won't be killed, will he? One of the Supreme Alliance fans asked the person beside him. No one answered. The atmosphere was oppressive. The audience watched as Chin Mo's HP decreased as he retreated. Goddess Luo didn't give up on this chance, rolling towards Chin Mo. Just when everyone turned their heads away, not wanting to watch this scene any longer, Yu Cixin stood up, his fingers gripping the railing in front of him. A sharp glint flashed past his eyes. Xiangnan fell into their trap. Fell into a trap. Chapter 10-11. The audience wasn't the only one who didn't understand Yu Cixin's words. Even the shoutcaster couldn't understand it. On the big screen, when Luoluo set up her sniper cannon, the figure in front of them suddenly disappeared. Everyone widened their eyes in disbelief. When they turned back to look at Chin Mo, he had actually reappeared at the edge of Xiangnan City. This is his first skill, rebounding. Lin Chintao's eyes wavered. Chin Mo did it on purpose, even his movement just now was to lure Goddess Luo out. Time is of the essence, the flying dragon alone wouldn't be able to push down the city. No, that's not right, that was his true movement. Even if there was a mistake, it was a mistake he made on purpose. The audience was at a loss for words. Could they imagine? The person who had been running at the front had suddenly returned to his original position, behind you, allowing you to chase him all the way, only to realize it was all part of his plan. Luoluo couldn't defend in time, there were only 5 seconds left before Xiao Jing's revival. Chin Mo seemed to have noticed it too. Without hesitation, he moved his long sword, the 3000 knife cutting appearing once more, along with the flying dragon's assistance, he destroyed the crystal in the center of Xiangnan City. The glittering shards fell. Amidst the splendor, a man with a long sword in his hand appeared. His face was handsome, and his clothes fluttered in the wind. 2 large words appeared on the big screen, accompanied by an inspiring sound effect, victory. The screens in front of Xiao Jing's team dimmed. Even the word Xiangnan, hanging in the middle of the arena, was extinguished. Only Supreme Alliance's name was left on the screens. It was obvious what it meant. Feng Shang rushed out to hug Lin Feng. Brother Feng, we won, we won. Yunhu glanced at his empty hand, turning to Feng Shang. He reached out to pull Lin Feng over, hugging him. His meaning was clear, he was mine, carry someone else. Feng Shang didn't stutter anymore, seeing Yunhu's expression, he changed to another person. Brother, we won, we won. Feng Yi was still looking at the screen, his pupils wavering. He hadn't recovered from the scene just now. If the media caught sight of his expression, they would definitely take pictures of it. After all, it was rare to see the smiling prince like this. But now, there was only that voice left in Feng Yi's ears. Victory! They really won. Cheers erupted along with the victory music. Lin Feng was probably so happy that he didn't know how to express his emotions. He tugged at his uniform and threw it at the audience. His smiling face was as bright as the sun. Even his teeth were white. He didn't care and reached out to hug Yunhu. Shui Yao Yao and Coco were still sitting in their chairs. Yin Wuyao seemed to be stunned for a moment, then he lowered his head and smiled, full of the charisma of an uncle. Lin Feng and the others had already rushed over. All the Supreme Alliance members stood in the same position, forming a beautiful scene. When the spotlight shone on them, they could even see the light dancing in their eyes. Over the years, from glory to defeat, this group of people had been ridiculed, looked down upon, slandered by anti-fans, and forgotten by people. Now, they could finally return to the position that belonged to the kings, the national champions. Even Xiangnan, who had lost, didn't say anything. Although Zhao Sanpang was unwilling, he could tell that he was blaming himself for not working harder. Goddess Luo stood at the side, lowering her voice. I'm sorry, I didn't expect Qin Mo to use such a move. I underestimated him. Even if his hand is injured, he wouldn't mess up his movements. Xiao Jing stood up, one hand in his pocket, the other reaching out to rub Goddess Luo's head. It's not just you, I didn't expect him to move like that either. Goddess Luo paused. It was obvious that she was still feeling down. Zhao Sanpang started to complain. Qin Mo has always been shameless, we just weren't as shameless as him. But he's still quite handsome. Goddess Luo raised her eyes. It was as if she was seeing the past him again. Zhao Sanpang was quite speechless towards his teammates. How did this person become a goddess in everyone's hearts? She always stood on his teammate's side and spoke. Even if he lost. It seemed like Xiangnan still maintained its demeanor and style. Even Xiao Jing was only downcast for a moment. When he led his team back to Supreme Alliance, he had already recovered his usual expression. Every team put in the same amount of effort. Xiangnan wasn't an exception. Their teammates would definitely be sad after they lost. But a loss was a loss. Xiangnan wouldn't find excuses for themselves. Xiao Jing glanced at Qin Mo's hand. The two captains brushed past each other. Xiao Jing's voice rang out. Xiangnan will definitely be the winner next year. Qin Mo's tone was calm. Qin Mo's tone was very calm. Although his noble side profile was pale, his aura did not dissipate at all. He was full of doubt. Zhao Sanpang didn't like to speak to him because of this. It was just 2 words, but it sounded arrogant. But they had indeed lost to Supreme Alliance. That was the truth. Xiangnan returned to the audience. The next step was the award ceremony. But at this moment, the youngster grabbed Qin Mo's right hand. With a handsome face, he said, Manager Feng will lead the award ceremony. Under everyone's watchful eyes, he brought the youngster out as though there was no one else around. He didn't seem to have any reservations at all. But even so, he dragged the youngster away. The youngster was dressed in a battle uniform with messy silver hair. He was unbelievably handsome. In that instant, Almighty Qin stilled. Just as he was about to say something, the youngster turned back with a sharp glare. Almighty Qin didn't say anything. Did he still look obedient? This was really a reverse CP, helplessly, the fans seemed to like it. They cupped their faces and cheered, showing off their love. Indeed, they were showing off their love. Even at such an occasion, they could leave early. The youngster didn't seem to have thought about how the media would view their relationship. It was the same for Almighty Qin. But the fans didn't know. Bo Jiu was angry. Extremely angry. But at the same time, she understood that no matter how painful his hand was, he wouldn't let go of the mouse. Even if it was for a second. Because he would always be carrying a team on his shoulders. But why didn't he tell her about the severe injury? Chapter 10-12. Bo Jiu was still looking at Qin Mo's hand when she pushed him into the taxi. Right hand. It wasn't just the hand that held the mouse, it was also the hand that held the gun. Bo Jiu couldn't say her thoughts out loud. She tilted her head and asked, "What's Dr. Qin's number?" Qin Mo sat at the back of the car, glancing at the youngster who was still holding his hand. He recited a string of numbers. The fans were right. The Almighty was exceptionally obedient today. The Qin family's family doctor was also an authoritative figure in the country. When she saw her private phone number ringing, she frowned. Unexpectedly, it was young Master Fu who called her after she picked up the call. young Master Chin seemed to be sitting beside him. This was the first time Dr. Chin had encountered such a situation. Even if his young master was injured, he wouldn't give his private number to anyone. It was even more impossible for him to let someone else talk about his condition. It seemed like young Master Fu was indeed special to his young master. But when he heard the word hand injury, Dr. Chin placed the medical record down. "I'll be right there." Bo Jiao had brought Chin Mo away in front of everyone. The one she should be worried about wasn't the reporters. It was He Honghua and Movie Queen and who had disguised themselves to watch the National League. He Honghua had wanted to give her Jiao a surprise. He didn't expect to witness such a scene. Moreover, the little girls beside him were saying things like, "So sweet, so compatible. So my almighty Chin is the one at the bottom. I really didn't expect it. Big Spade is indeed a handsome young man. What beauty." What did that mean? He Honghua was confused by the side. She turned to ask Movie Queen and heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Jiao dragging her cold son away. After all, Mo was really willing to gamble both his hands for a competition. Fortunately, there was someone to take care of him when she wasn't around. Movie Queen was still thinking about how to reply to He Honghua's question without incurring He Honghua's disgust. Even when she had first discovered the relationship between the two kids, she had struggled for a long time before convincing herself to let go of some old beliefs. But she had been in the film industry for so many years and wasn't surprised by such things. But He Honghua was different. Which mother would feel good after seeing her son like this? But when he thought about it, it wasn't a good idea to keep hiding it like this. Hence, Movie Queen decided to be honest. She reached out to pat He Honghua's hand. "Sister He, this isn't a good place to talk. Let's go out first." He Honghua nodded and turned to look at the girls. She thought to herself that she really had a generation gap with these children. She couldn't understand what they were saying at all. From the looks of it, these people seemed to really like her Jiao. That was enough. He Honghua almost wanted to ask someone to buy 10 boxes of ice water for these little girls. They were so excited that their throats were probably hoarse from all the shouting. But she also understood that if she did that, the media would say that her family was a nouveau riche who used money to show off. In the past, she had suffered a lot because of this, so she didn't want to cause trouble for Jiao. When she saw these little girls again, she would thank them individually. The group of fangirls at the scene could never have imagined that they would miss their mother-in-law just like that. As for why it was a mother-in-law, because Big Spade was their husband. The fangirls had always thought of themselves as such. He Honghua listened along the way, widening her eyes at times. Movie Queen, who was experienced, chuckled. "It's nothing, that's how it is when you like someone. Our Cold Boys fans even said they wanted to bear his children. It's normal, it's normal." He Honghua thought, indeed, it's normal, but our Jiao is a girl. Being called husband, the people's sister he met just now were CP fans. When there was no one around, Movie Queen broke into a faint smile, her expression serious. "Actually, there's something I haven't told you because I was worried that you wouldn't be able to accept it. But now that the competition is over and the two kids don't seem to have any qualms, rather than hearing it from the media, I might as well tell you." With that, Movie Queen paused before continuing, "The two kids are together." He Honghua froze. She wasn't dumb and quickly understood who Movie Queen was referring to. But she had never heard her Jiao's family mention it. "Sister, could it be that you're mistaken? Our Jiao is..." Before He Honghua could finish, Movie Queen patted her hand. "I know you want to say that Jiao is a boy and so is Mo. How could they be together? But sometimes, feelings are like this. Sometimes, when you really, really like someone, you'll even ignore their gender. That icy son of ours will only be a little human in front of Jiao. Big sister he probably can't accept it right now. As a mother, I felt the same way before. But now, I want you to give these two kids some time. Take a good look at them and see if they can persevere on this path. If they don't separate after a long time, I think you can rest assured. I believe that they didn't do it on a whim, or that they're mentally ill. It's just that the person they met just happened to be a man. He Honghua's mind was in a mess. She didn't have any objections to Sister Anne's words, but her Jill was a girl. If they were really together, Jill would have told her. Which meant that up until now, the Qin family still thought Jill was a boy. For the first time, He Honghua felt that her method back then was a little stupid. She was so stupid that she might harm her Jill. There were some things she couldn't say. Once she said it, Jill's actions would become a lie. At this moment, He Honghua turned back to look at the support team that liked Spadesy. There were some things that she couldn't see clearly. But now, Jill wasn't an ordinary person. The national champion, these 4 words meant that Jill had become a super popular esports player. Popularity could make people live in heaven, but it could also send them back to hell. The fact that Jill was a girl couldn't be known. What she was afraid of was that when the time came, these likes would turn into a flood. When that happened, she didn't need to think to know what would happen to her Jill. Or maybe her Jill wouldn't care about others, but she knew her own child. Jill cared about her teammates in Supreme Alliance. Movie Queen and glanced at He Honghua's face, unable to decipher her intentions. But she was sure that things didn't seem to be going smoothly. That was true. If things were going too smoothly, it wouldn't be real. It seemed like she had to help her son more. The competition's procedures had to be completed eventually. Qin Mo left. As the club's director, Feng Yi was indeed qualified to receive this award. Under the camera, the Supreme Alliance members were still as handsome as ever. Once everyone had left, Yunhu pulled Lin Feng, who was still smiling foolishly. Yunhu pulled Lin Feng, who was still smiling foolishly, back and pressed him into the changing room. His voice was deep and low. You haven't forgotten what you said. Is it your home or mine? Lin Feng didn't know what to say. Lin Feng didn't have an excuse to hide anymore. He cursed softly. How can you do such things at home? Why can't you do such things at home? Yunhu arched a brow. The two of them were so close to each other that Lin Feng felt a little awkward, especially when their breaths hit his face. He averted his gaze and said, "What if my family sees us? Let's go get F***ck." When Yunhu heard this, he understood what he meant. He didn't want anyone to know about the situation between them, even if they had sex. He just owed him and had to return the favor. Yunhu clenched his fists, suppressing the tightness in his throat. He smiled. We'll do as you said, get F, remember to bring your ID and don't be so stiff. This time, you are willing, don't make it seem like I'm forcing you. With that, he let go of Lin Feng's shoulder. Indeed, Lin Feng didn't want to appear like a newbie. After all, he had bragged about his non-existent romantic past in front of Yunhu. He adjusted his jacket arrogantly, his voice calm. You don't have to remind me, it's not like I haven't driven F before. I forgot, this isn't your first time. Yunhu smiled, his fingers digging deeper. He could still remember how he had felt. When he had heard this person say that he had gotten F with a girl, which was why he hadn't returned home, his heart had ached terribly. That was probably enough. After so many years. It had always been like this. Perhaps it was really enough. Supreme Alliance had won. He could study abroad in peace. Even the decision to study abroad was just to forget someone. After graduating from university, that guy would definitely find a girl to fall in love with. If he stayed, he would definitely think of a way to snatch her away. Lin Feng probably wouldn't forgive him. They were no longer the youngsters they used to be. After a fight, That guy would bring the game console to him at night, hugging his shoulders and saying, "You're such a person, I'm just buying food for a girl, I just think she's pretty. But if you think I'm embarrassing us guys, I won't fight anymore." He still remembered that time when he had asked that guy, "If I fall into the water with your sister, who will you save?" That guy had grinned. "I'll jump and you save me, I don't know how to swim." The same question would definitely be asked differently now. Because Yun-Hu knew that he had his own plans, and in his plans, he wasn't included. Long ago, when he had asked that person to study abroad with him. When that person had rejected him with a faint smile, he had known. "Huzi, you go. We want different things. I want to make money and marry a wife. Earn money and marry a wife." When Yun-Hu turned, he clenched his fists. When he glanced up, he was already calm. He knew what he had to do. Qin family. This was the first time Dr. Qin felt so pressured as a doctor. It was mainly because of the silver-haired youngster who was watching him. Young master really treated him like a porcelain doll. Even though his young master's hand was badly injured, it wasn't to the extent where he couldn't even hold a glass of water. The youngster's long legs were bent on the bed, one hand holding the glass of water. The way she fed his young master was extremely gentle and domineering. What was going on? Dr. Qin was a bright person, he knew that his young master enjoyed such treatment the most. Hence, he didn't say anything, treating himself as though he was air. "Is it hot?" Bojo asked Qin Mo with her bright eyes. She didn't seem to realize that she was behaving like a fox lying in front of her master. She was extremely obedient, making him want to caress her messy, fluffy silver hair. Qin Mo's lips curved. "It's all right. Then drink the medicine." Bojo clipped the pill that Dr. Qin had prescribed and sent it towards Qin Mo's lips. Qin Mo frowned, turning towards Dr. Qin as though asking him if he didn't know that he hated taking such meaningless medicine. Dr. Qin shrugged, indicating that he couldn't do anything. If he didn't prescribe some medicine, that young Master Fu who was serving him would probably doubt his medical skills. Qin Mo looked at the pill that was inches away from him, not moving. Bojo seemed to have thought of something and said, "I understand." She stuffed the pill into her mouth, biting it with her teeth. Then she reached out to pinch Qin Mo's chin and kissed him. Dr. Qin was stunned by the scene. He had always thought that his young master was the one on top, but now it seemed like it wasn't the case. Qin Mo, who was kissed, paused for a moment. Then, he naturally accepted the pill. This was the first time he felt that eating such a disgusting thing didn't make him irritated. Instead, it was a little sweet. His lips were filled with the unique scent of a youngster. Qin Mo couldn't help but smile. On the other hand, Bojo regretted the moment she fed him the medicine. After all, they weren't like when they were young anymore. Back then, her pet didn't like to take medicine. It was all because of her that he caught a cold and had a high fever. His exquisite little face was covered with a fever patch and he kept coughing. No matter what Grandpa said, he wouldn't listen. He was arrogant like a little prince, but he didn't mention anything about taking medicine. She watched anxiously, climbing over the wall. She drank a mouthful of cough syrup and kissed him on the mouth. He probably hadn't expected her to be so unruly at that time. His little face was flushed with anger. He even asked her if she was a girl and if she knew that she shouldn't be so careless. In the end, he said forget it. He couldn't do anything to her anyway, but he couldn't let her hug him if he found out that she fed medicine to her other friends. At that time, Bojo felt that this person was really. He knew that she liked to hug him to sleep, but he still used this to pressure her. However, that night, he still agreed to let her sleep on his small bed. He held a book and told her a story. Unknowingly, his face turned red again. Anyway, How did the little cutie who liked to blush back then grow into such a black-bellied almighty? Chapter 10:13. Chi Nemo didn't know what the youngster was thinking about. He lifted the corner of his lips and pressed down on the youngster's waist. His voice was calm, and there was a hint of abstinence. Dr. Chin is still here. Even though I know you really want to push me down, you have to control yourself, understand? Bojo. She had just been feeding him medicine. Why did the Almighty's words change completely? Besides, what was wrong with the Almighty's hand? Why didn't he let her get up? As a very discerning family doctor, Dr. Chin knew that he should choose to disappear at this time. But his young master's other hand was in a serious condition. He was wondering if he should inform his boss and madam. She should also remind young Master Fu to restrain himself in some aspects. His young master's hand wasn't in a good condition. After Dr. Chin finished his diagnosis, he was about to say something when Chin Mo glanced over. Dr. Chin swallowed his words. Bojo was still asking, Dr. Chin, how's Brother Mo's hand? Dr. Chin smiled. It's not a big deal, but you have to be careful with your actions. Don't eat too much and drink more bone broth. I'll inform Madame Zhang later. Oh. Nothing serious. Bojo watched as Dr. Chin turned and smiled. As long as it's nothing serious. Dr. Chin packed his things and walked out. When he had been on the phone, he hadn't expected the youngster to find an excuse to follow behind him. The moment he hung up, he turned back to see the youngster smiling at him mischievously. As a doctor who saves lives, it isn't good to lie, right? Dr. Chin smiled faintly. As an esports almighty, it isn't good to eavesdrop on other people's conversations. What do you think, young Master Joe? Bojo nodded. Dr. Chin is right. Dr. Chin watched as the silver-haired youngster took a step forward. He smiled wantonly. Fortunately, I'm eavesdropping openly. Dr. Chin. Where's your shame? How is Brother Mo's hand? I hope Dr. Chin can tell me the truth so I can be more prepared. Bojo glanced at the person in front of her. Or perhaps, how confident are you in treating it? He was already stuck here. Moreover, he had called for the general to come back earlier. Even if he tried to play it down, the other party wouldn't believe him. In addition, in the past, young master didn't let anyone look after him. It wasn't easy for someone to get close to the young master. Now that the method was in place, it might be a good thing. Since young Master Joe has put it this way, I won't hide it from you anymore. Young master's hand is an old injury, and it's not easy to heal. The authorities in America have also said that young master's hand needs to be treated first and nurtured second. Ever since the start of the National League, the weight on his wrist has been getting worse day by day. I can only temporarily reduce the swelling on young master's hand and prevent it from worsening. If we really want to treat young master's hand, he can't touch a computer in the near future. We have to go to America to find an expert, but this expert hasn't shown up in the past few years. Some people say that he went to be a family doctor, but no one knows where he is exactly. What's the expert's name? Bojo asked. Dr. Chin said, Robert. What did you say, was his name? Bojo paused when she heard the name. She couldn't help but ask again. Dr. Chin said, Robert is an old expert. You probably haven't heard of him. Bojo caressed the bridge of her nose. She didn't say a word, but her thin lips lifted slightly. Dr. Chin didn't understand why young Master Fu was smiling. However, after that, the other party didn't ask many questions and changed the topic after just a few sentences. Speaking of which, Dr. Chin, do you know what happened to Brother Mo back then? How did his wrist get injured? Dr. Chin paused, his smile still lingering. I'm only in charge of treating young master, I'm not sure about the rest. Bojo didn't believe him. If she wasn't wrong, Dr. Chin was from the military and should be a military doctor with a title. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been that phone call. Bojo wasn't as observant as the Almighty, but she could tell that Dr. Chin's actions were different from the other doctors in the hospital. Only those who came from the military would walk with their backs straight. Even the stretch of their arms was different from others. But she couldn't force him to say it. Bojo was happy about one thing. The person she wanted to kidnap the most was the Almighty. In the past, she couldn't find an excuse. Now, she finally had one. Robert was clearly her grandfather, the housekeeper. In the past, when Bojo was alone, she had been injured, but they were all minor injuries that didn't require treatment at home. Before she found the person who had schemed against her, she didn't intend to contact her family. It was normal for her to not return for half a year. Grandfather Butler was the only one in her family. If she contacted him, he would be in danger. This was what Bojo had thought since she was reborn. Now, did this mean that she could kidnap the Almighty when she left Jiang City? After all, the Almighty's hand needed treatment. That was the reason she convinced herself. Bojo couldn't suppress the smile on her face when she entered the room. Chin Mo lay on the bed, watching the youngster who looked as though she had eaten honey. He arched a brow. "What's the matter? Tell me so I can be happy." Bojo retracted her smile. How could she let the main character know about the kidnapping? She walked over, pulled a chair over, and sat down suavely. She supported her chin with one hand. "It's nothing, Brother Mo, don't use your hands unless necessary. Just tell me what you want to do." Chin Mo placed the magazine in his hands to the side and asked slowly, "I can do anything." Bojo's instincts told her it was a trap. She lifted her thin lips. "Not suitable for children. What are you thinking about?" Chin Mo changed the topic calmly. "Speaking of unsuitable for children, shouldn't you explain who allowed you to stay in school and watch a bunch of naked guys walk around in front of you?" Bojo didn't expect the Almighty to still remember this matter even after the National League. She thought for a moment, a serious expression on her face. "I'm in my 3rd year of high school, it's time for me to study. Staying in school won't affect my lessons." Chin Mo chuckled, tossing the phone over to her. Bojo tapped on it. The #1 middle school internet was filled with posts titled, "School Hunk Frog Jumping." She was indeed a little dumb as she frog jumped around the field with her hands behind her back. More importantly, the headmaster was standing beside her. "Study hard." Chin Mo lifted the corner of his lips. "Will I be punished?" Bojo kept her phone. "The headmaster is jealous of my good looks, but I can't help it. I have the heart to study." "Since you have the heart, bring the physics book over," Chin Mo said faintly. Bojo wasn't sure if the Almighty was suspecting her again. But she knew what was going to happen next. "The National League is over, it doesn't matter if I fail physics in the future." More importantly, the moment she started reading the physics book, she would fall asleep. Chin Mo glanced at her, his tone calm. "How can I allow my student to fail?" "Brother Mo, it's not that I want to criticize you, but sometimes, you shouldn't be so vain." Bojo didn't want to take the physics book. She reached for a cigarette on the coffee table, ready to light it up. Chin Mo reached out with his left hand, pulling the cigarette back. "Go eat your sweets." "I'm out of sweets." She wouldn't have thought of smoking even if she had sweets. The thought of kidnapping the Almighty filled her with excitement and a cigarette to celebrate. Chin Mo placed the cigarette at the side. "In the future, you're not allowed to smoke without sweets." "Brother Mo, you want me to quit smoking?" Bojo frowned. "Don't you smoke too?" Chin Mo knew that in order to teach a certain someone well, he had to set an example at the right time. "I won't smoke when you're around. We'll quit together, Bojo said. That's fair. Chin Mo arched a brow. She was certain that he wouldn't be able to quit. Sure. Bojo paused. She probably hadn't expected such an answer. She laid there lazily. Are you really going to quit? The Almighty smoked more frequently than she did. She was impressed that he was able to quit so easily. As the nation's school hunk, you should take care of your public image. Chin Mo lifted the youngster's chin. Most importantly, your body. How can you still smoke when you have asthma, MMH? Bojo didn't reply since asthma was a part of this body. Ever since she had taken over this body, she hadn't thought about it much. The youngster didn't reply. Her thin lips were pursed into a straight line. Chin Mo sighed. Little Fujo, say something. Bojo heard the way little Fujo addressed him. Bojo felt a tightness in her chest. Her surname wasn't Fu. More importantly, she couldn't tell the Almighty her surname. Don't call me that. She hadn't expected the person in front of her to be so disgusted by the way she was addressed. What do you want me to call you? Chin Mo tapped her chin with his finger. Call her sugar daddy, Bojo thought. Just don't call her little Fujo. Because that tone of voice was filled with love, but it wasn't her name. Bojo tilted her head. She didn't know what was bothering her. Chin Mo watched as the youngster tilted her head. Her stray hair hung down. He reached out and pulled her back, allowing her to lie on his chest once more. His voice traveled into her ears, a gentleness in it. Madam Chin. Bojo froze. Her heart raced. Madam Chin. What is it? Chin Mo glanced down at her startled face. His tone was neither fast nor slow. We're already sleeping. Aren't you going to take responsibility for me? Once I kidnap you, you won't let me take responsibility. Bojo held back her words. She reached out to push herself up. Chin Mo's uninjured hand pressed against her back. He closed his eyes. Sleep with me for a while. This position. Chapter 10:14. Bojo was about to adjust herself when a voice came from above. A voice rang out from above her head. The voice was still faint but strangely hoarse. Are you trying to test my endurance by moving around like that? Chin Mo's words calmed Bojo instantly. After all, the heat coming from beneath her was indeed scorching. As his ears were pressed against the man's chest, it was as if the only sound left in the world was the man's heartbeat. Thud, thud, thud. It was peaceful. It was as though they had returned to their childhood. During the summer on Wall Street, the trees in the courtyard were flourishing. Back then, it would be much easier for her to climb over the wall. Once there was nothing stopping her, she would go next door. She would go next door even more frequently. But after playing for a while, she would feel sleepy. She was still young and had to maintain a balanced biological clock. The two of them would take afternoon naps like that. But back then, she knew he liked cleanliness, but she couldn't control herself, rolling around on his bed. Only when his little face darkened and he wrapped her up with a blanket did she finally calm down. Unlike now, when it was so dangerous. Bojo didn't move, but she could feel something pressing against her. Don't look around, I won't touch you. The voice came again, but this time, it was much gentler than usual. Bojo retracted her gaze, feeling sleepy. But she wasn't here to take care of a patient or to sleep. She maintained her principles, one hand hugging Chin Mo's waist, the other holding onto his injured hand, subconsciously worried that it would be touched. Dr. Chin was right when he said that Chin Mo was like a porcelain doll. In order to not fall asleep, Bojo tried to find a topic. Movie queen and said that you couldn't sleep well in the past. After finding me as a pillow, your insomnia was cured. Brother Mo, you have to be gentle with your pillow. Chin Mo glanced at the person lying on top of him. Even when she spoke, she was still in a daze. He reached out to push aside her hair, planting a kiss on it. Okay. Perhaps it was because he had received a response, or perhaps it was because the temperature and the aura of the person he was hugging were too in line with his aesthetic standards and requirements. In short, it was very comfortable, so he fell asleep unknowingly. Chin Mo's fingers caressed her face. He had never imagined that there would be a day when he would be so close to someone. She couldn't sleep well because she would have nightmares. He dreamed of water, bottomless water. Chin Mo was a criminal psychologist. He knew it was a psychological problem. However, even with the knowledge he had, he couldn't find an answer. Why was it that every time he woke up, the most uncomfortable thing wasn't the water, but when he stretched out his hand, he couldn't grasp anything? His palm was empty, and so was his heart. At the very beginning, he didn't even understand why there were tears on his face. Was it because he owed her? He was indebted to the person he had wronged, but he still didn't know the person's name. Therefore, he never touched any cases again. However, that feeling of emptiness did not disappear. It was as if the most important thing had been lost. Until this guy appeared. Chin Mo lowered his lids, watching the youngster who was snoring softly but didn't forget to hold on to his hand. His lips landed on the top of her head. He could vaguely hear that person saying something. When he got closer, he could only hear a name. Chapter 10:15. Chin Mo's hand froze on the youngster's ear. At that moment, all the warmth in his eyes was like water, completely retreating from his eyes. That was the scene movie queen saw when she entered. They seemed to be on good terms, but when she saw her cold son's expression, it didn't seem to be the case. She was confused. What was going on? Chin Mo tilted his body and stood up. Movie queen couldn't see his expression because his fringe fell down. She waited for him to come out of the bedroom. Movie queen asked, "Son, did your hand get worse?" "No." Chin Mo was never one to worry. His voice was calm. "It's just an old injury acting up. I need some time to recover." Movie queen understood her son's personality. He had always been like this. She knew she wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. Hence, she decided to give Deputy Chin a call. But there was one thing. Movie queen glanced towards the bedroom and lowered her voice. "Now that sister he knows about your relationship, it's hard for her to accept it. You have to follow the rules, don't always stay just because you like it. When it's time for Joe to come home, he has to come home." She thought her son would listen to her since Chin Mo had always been a well-mannered person. But movie queen hadn't expected him to reply. "It's better for her to stay by my side." His voice was faint, probably due to the quality of his voice. There was a hint of coldness in it. He hadn't mentioned anything about Joe returning. That wasn't something a son would do. Movie queen lifted her head and glanced over at Chin Mo. She seemed to be in a daze, her gaze unfocused. However, the coldness in her eyes made movie queen furrow her brows. Bojo wasn't aware that the words she had blurted out in her sleep would cause such a misunderstanding. But for some reason, she had dreamt of Hoshino and how the Almighty had detected him. It was probably because of her uneasiness. The uneasiness of staying in Jiang City had affected her unknowingly. She had noticed it too, which was why she had moved out of her home and into school. Fortunately, everything was in preparation. There shouldn't be any problems. The sun started to set in the west. The sky at the end of June and the beginning of July would never darken so quickly. Even at 5:00 in the afternoon, when he walked out of his house, the sun was still very bright outside. Lin Feng took out his ID. For some reason, he felt a little guilty when he saw his Empress Dowager sitting on the sofa. It was probably because he was going out to do something bad. Most importantly, apart from his Empress Dowager, his godmother, Yunhu's mother, was also on the sofa. The two of them were probably discussing how to get together in the future. The Empress Dowager suddenly asked, "Huzi is leaving, isn't he?" Lin Feng nodded. "The paperwork has already been prepared. We're just waiting for him to finish the competition. Now that he's the champion, he should have nothing to worry about. Poor Lin Feng, I guess he will have to play alone in the future." Mrs. Lin smiled and said, "Come to think of it, these two people have never been separated. The two of them have been good brothers since childhood. They won't be estranged from each other. I'll go and exchange some foreign currency later. They'll be leaving in less than a week. I have to prepare more for Huzi." Chapter 10:16. Lin Feng was originally sneaking out like a cat, but when he heard this, his fingers paused, and his face was blank for a moment. However, he quickly regained his composure. Otherwise, if the two empresses saw him, he wouldn't be able to go out today. After all, his mother could talk about the kid next door for an entire day and night. She wouldn't even repeat the adjectives. Lin Feng was still a little hesitant after coming out of his house. The thought of being pinned down made him want to resist. He lit a cigarette and leaned against the wall for a while. Then, he thought of something and looked it up on the internet. He typed, "What should a man do for the first time?" Damn, what's this? Why are they all selling medicine? Lin Feng scrolled down the page and complained. Really, he was young and aggressive. Did he need medicine? Huzi probably didn't need it either. The main thing was that if he bought medicine, he would be the one suffering. It seemed like Baidu wasn't completely trustworthy. He decided to look for the answer on a certain page. Lin Feng moved his fingers and changed the website. Not bad this time. There were a lot of answers. But they were all about how to make a girl feel romantic. It wasn't suitable for him at all. He could only post it himself. After posting it, he added, 2 boys. The post instantly went viral. Countless people replied. You have to buy everything. You know that, right? Lin Feng replied, can I give some suggestions? Of course he knew that. You have to do some foreplay for the other party to feel comfortable. Oh right, are you guys okay? Let's do some tests. Lin Feng didn't hesitate. It's our first time. No problem. Then be gentle. If you're not gentle, the other party will hurt. Lin Feng finally found the key point. Hurt. How much? Very. After all, you know. Lin Feng thought, I'm a straight man. What do I know? Moreover, you're being so reserved. Can't you be more straightforward? Why aren't you saying anything? To be honest, I have a question. Are you the one being pinned down? Now that you mention it, it does seem like it. Hurry up and say something. Lin Feng was really stupid to talk. After knowing that it was painful, Lin Feng started to search for other things. In the end, he bought a small bottle of ergotu in the supermarket. To put it simply, after drinking alcohol, even if it was painful, one could endure it and it would pass. What's more, he was also drunk when he had sex with Huzi last time. Basically, he couldn't remember anything. He thought about it. This memory would probably become a dark history for the rest of his life. It would be better if it was vague. Yes, there was nothing wrong with it. Ha! F*ck, so bitter and spicy. Lin Feng took a deep breath before calling Yunhu. I'm at the convenience store at the entrance of the district. Come out, I've gotten my ID. Let's go get a car together. I have already driven it. The voice on the other side sounded even fainter than usual, but for some reason, there was a hint of something else mixed in the faint tone. Just when Lin Feng wanted to hear it clearly, Yunhu had already reported an address. Sheraton, 1821, come over. So fast. Didn't we agree to go together? Lin Feng gulped down another mouthful of alcohol. He had drunk too much of this ergotu. It tasted good, but his body was burning up. After preparing, Lin Feng jumped into a taxi and headed straight to the hotel. After all, this kind of thing had to be done in one go. Chapter 10:17. By the time Lin Feng entered the elevator, the alcohol had already kicked in. He was Supreme Alliance's Team Beauty. Not only did he look devilish, he had relied on his snow-white skin that didn't tan no matter how much he tanned. He had dominated this title for 3 years. Now, his face was flushed from the alcohol and his eyes were watery. He didn't look like someone his age at all. But Lin Feng had always been tall. He was 1.8 meters tall, only 3 centimeters shorter than Yunhu. Under normal circumstances, even in this state, girls would find him incomparably handsome. When they brushed past each other, they wanted to ask this handsome guy with one hand in his pocket what the microsignal was. But looking at his slightly unbuttoned shirt and the intoxicating smell of alcohol, he definitely had a date. He wondered which girl was so lucky. Lin Feng's eyes were still smiling. In his heart, he chanted 100 times that he was a straight man. It was just a little pressure. What was the big deal? A man had to be flexible. After mentally preparing himself, Lin Feng knocked on the door coolly. He couldn't be weak in terms of aura. This was the dignity of a straight man. He didn't know what was going on inside. Yunhu didn't open the door immediately. He waited for about 3 seconds before the door opened. The person who opened the door had his shirt completely unbuttoned. He seemed to have just showered and was interrupted in the middle of making out. His dark hair covered his face, making him look even more handsome than usual. The next moment, an alluring youngster hugged Yunhu's waist from behind. He wasn't wearing any clothes on his upper body. His smile was flirtatious. Who is he? Is he the takeaway you ordered? Are you afraid you'll be hungry? No. There wasn't a hint of change in his voice. He's a friend. The youngster chuckled lightly. Hurry up and send him away. You can chat another day. Go in first. Yunhu reached out and pulled him away. He took a step forward, pushing Lin Feng with one hand and closing the door with the other. Lin Feng didn't know if it was because he had drunk too much, but his temples started to hurt. Everything seemed a little unreal. Who the fuck, explain what's going on right now. Yunhu tilted his head and lit a cigarette, holding it between his fingers. His tone was calm. I've thought about it. Since you aren't willing, there's no point in forcing you. I'm gay and I can't be straight. He has liked me for a long time. Compared to liking someone else, it seems easier to be liked. In the future, he will be studying abroad and can be my companion. You know, I don't like to fool around. Instead of forcing you, why don't we be brothers? Lin Feng opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he realized that other than the smell of alcohol, he couldn't say anything. It was as if something was stuck in his throat. The ergotu that he had poured into his stomach was starting to take effect. The burning sensation in his stomach and heart made him want to bend over. However, Lin Feng knew that he couldn't make himself look too pathetic at this moment. Otherwise, he, who had just checked the information, would really be a little stupid. Speaking of which, what kind of wine did he drink to make him feel so uncomfortable? That day. Before Lin Feng could finish his sentence, Yunhu flicked the cigarette ash and interrupted him. Yunhu flicked his cigarette and interrupted him. Nothing happened that day, I lied to you. You should be smarter in the future and think more, especially after I go overseas. Don't be like this all the time and don't feel guilty towards me. Chapter 10:18. Also, if you want to find a girlfriend, you have to be careful. Some girls have ulterior motives for getting close to you. The ones in school were just trying to get close to me through you. Some aren't, it's just that you don't have the ability to differentiate them. Yunhu chuckled. I can't let him wait for too long. You might not be used to it, but I have no choice. I can't go back straight. If Lin Feng didn't leave, he would feel like he was unnecessary. I'll go back first. Yunhu clenched his left hand as though he was restraining himself. His voice was very low. Lin Feng didn't move immediately. He didn't know why his feet felt heavy. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have drunk. But it was obvious that he was disturbing the other party. From what Yunhu said, that person could go overseas with him. That was good too. They should be together with the same type of person. If he continued to stay, he would really be blind. He reached out and patted Yunhu's shoulder as though they were brothers. Go in, I'm leaving. Okay. Yunhu watched as the person turned around. His palms seemed to have formed an imprint. Lin Feng smiled. He didn't know why he was smiling. It was probably as Yunhu had said, he should learn to be smarter in the future and not do such stupid things. His stomach started to hurt again. The alcohol made him feel uncomfortable. He must have disturbed the intimacy of those two people. It was better to leave as soon as possible. Lin Feng. Suddenly, that person's voice came from behind. Lin Feng didn't turn his head. He probably felt that he was in a sorry state. What? We'll still be brothers in the future, right? That person's voice had a light smile. Lin Feng smiled too. He waved his hand. Don't be silly. We'll definitely be brothers for life. Go on, I'll leave. Actually, Lin Feng had long felt that Yunhu would fall for him. From a certain perspective, it was because they had grown up together. They were already familiar with each other's existence. That was why when Yunhu had his first awakening of love, he felt that he had fallen for him. Now, he was sure of it. Fortunately, he didn't fall head first. There was one thing that Yunhu was right about. He really didn't have the ability to discern what some people said. It was a simple, I like you, and he took it seriously. Lin Feng pressed the elevator button. After he walked in, he gradually bent down. The burning sensation in his stomach forced him to hold the elevator with one hand. But even so, it felt better than standing there. It was quite silly. In the future, if anyone said that drinking wine could make people complacent, he would take the wine bottle and chisel them. He probably ran out of energy in the end. With his back against the smooth surface of the elevator, he just sat there. Lin Feng was rather rational. He knew he shouldn't create trouble for Feng Yi. After all, Supreme Alliance had just won the National League. If the media photographed him drunk in the hotel elevator, he didn't know what they would write about him. He took out his phone, intending to call Little Spade and ask her to pick him up. But when Lin Feng took out his phone, he suddenly froze. There was a drop of water on the screen. The water running down his face. Lin Feng suddenly trembled, and his eyes began to waver. For a very, very long time, he could not get through to that phone number. Chapter 10:19. Lin Feng's departure seemed to have sapped all the energy in Yunhu's body. He held it in for a long time. His palms were red from clenching so tightly that he didn't rush over. He didn't want to crush that person once and crush all the feelings he had for so many years. He also didn't want to be treated like a stranger after returning to China. That was good. Even if one day, he really appeared at his wedding as the best man. At the very least, he could still drink for that person many years later. His heart felt like it was being torn apart. Even when he breathed, he felt weak. When the youngster pushed the door open and walked out, he saw the man in this state. That handsome face was pale. It didn't look like he had just found him. "Why aren't you coming in?" The bewitching youngster licked his lips. "Honestly, you liked that person just now, right? But he looks like a straight man. Even though he looks good, it's obvious that he isn't on the same path as us." Yunhu seemed to have just realized that there was someone there. He reached out to close the door and walked in. As he walked, he fastened his shirt and said in a cold tone, "You can leave." The bewitching youngster looked at him and felt pity. "Your figure is really good. How about this, I'll refund you the money and we can do it once." Yunhu didn't even look at that person. He threw the clothes on the bed to him. His rejection meant everything. The bewitching youngster didn't believe it. "Hey, I look good too. You know how our circle works. When you can't hold it in, you can do it once." With that, he walked over, his breath blowing into Yunhu's ear. Even his hand wanted to touch it. Yunhu reached out and blocked his arm. There wasn't a trace of warmth in his eyes. "If you still want your hand and your job, get out." Boring. The bewitching youngster saw that he didn't have a chance. He bit his lower lip angrily and left with his clothes. Anyway, this person gave him a lot of money. Besides, when his boss asked him to come, he had already instructed him not to offend him because of his high status. At first, he thought that he could cozy up to a sugar daddy. Why couldn't he get close to him? "Are you impotent?" Yunhu smirked. "I can't do it to you. I'll say it one last time, get out." The enchanting young man knew that if he continued to stay, he would really have no future. No matter what, he was still a nobody. It was better for him to leave. The door was closed. The room returned to its original state. It was bone-piercingly cold. Even though it was summer in July, Yunhu felt as though his heart was frozen in ice water. She looked at the bed in the living room. He suddenly felt that this place was very dirty. Perhaps it was because he wasn't that guy. In reality, Yunhu didn't dare to let Lin Feng in. Because if they came in, they would find that the bed was not moved at all. Even the enchanting young man was just an act he found. It was as if he couldn't stand even a little bit of that fellow's alienation and awkwardness towards him. He began to calculate carefully. It had been a long time since Lin Feng had been alone with him. He was probably trying to avoid arousing suspicion and worried that his family would find out. Yes, as a straight man, of course he would be worried. Sometimes, Yunhu really wanted to tell that guy, "I'm not bent either. I saw that the other guys couldn't take it either. I just like you too much." Chapter 10:20. Yunhu sat there for a long time before placing the ringing phone to his ear. He glanced out the window. "Hello, it's you. Help me settle it." "There's no need, just one plane ticket will do." "Yes, I don't need two." "Why did it suddenly become one? Didn't you say someone was going with you?" Yunhu tightened his grip, seemingly laughing at himself. "There won't be anyone going with me. After today, that person wouldn't be embarrassed anymore. Similarly, there wouldn't be any possibility in front of him." He understood. That person said he was naive and sweet, but there were some things he didn't care about. It was strange too. How could a boy be like that? Ever since he was young, he had always said that he would marry a girl and treat her well. These days, girls didn't have a sense of security. If he liked someone, he would only choose that person and treat her well for the rest of his life. When Lin Feng said this, there were other people around. Everyone burst into laughter, but the meaning behind it was unclear. Only he sat at the side, envious of the person he would like. Once he chose her, he would treat her well for the rest of his life. This sentence sounded so good. It was a pity that he would never be that person. Lin Feng, who was so clean and pure, would not accept his current behavior. Yunhu glanced down, reaching out to cover his expression. The person on the other end asked, "What's wrong with your voice? Why does it sound so weird? Are you feeling unwell?" Yunhu. There was no reply. The person on the other end froze. Then, he exclaimed in shock, "Yunhu, are you crying? How is that possible?" Yunhu laughed. When his thin lips curved up, there was a trace at the corner of his lips. His voice was hoarse. "Why would I cry? You're thinking too much. I'm hanging up, Ka." The phone was locked and the screen dimmed. His pitch-black eyes dimmed along with it, time trickled by. Outside the hotel, Lin Feng didn't call Little Spade. There were some things that he had to solve himself. Otherwise, he would be a coward. Besides, if Little Spade asked him why his stomach hurt, he couldn't possibly tell him that he had fed himself a bottle of ergotu in order to send himself to Yunhu's mouth. In the end, it didn't work. It was embarrassing, wasn't it? Besides, he had to go home. He couldn't let the Empress Dowager do it herself. Sitting in a taxi, he felt dizzy the entire way. The master was a nice person. He kept advising him, "You youngsters, you drink so much when you're heartbroken. Drink less in the future. Think about your parents, it's not a big deal." "Okay," Lin Feng replied as he looked out of the window. The driver glanced sideways at the person sitting next to him. He felt that the other party was exceptionally obedient, so he even adjusted the temperature of the air conditioner. Lin Feng might not have many good points, but there was one thing he had always done. He would not show any emotion in front of his mother. It was the same this time. Mama Lin was tapping her back as she spoke on the phone. "Yes, he will be doing business in the future. That's good too. Lin Feng isn't suited for politics anyway." After she hung up, Lin Feng walked over to massage the Empress Dowager's shoulders. "You're back." Mama Lin turned around and paused. "Why do you reek of alcohol?" Chapter 10:21. Lin Feng smiled brightly. "Supreme Alliance 1, I'm so happy that I drank. Look at you, you're already so old. Why can't you learn from Yunhu and be more mature?" Mama Lin nagged, but her eyes showed how much she liked her son. "Alright, you must be feeling terrible after drinking. Go drink some hot water and sleep." Lin Feng replied. After drinking the hot water, he walked upstairs. After he threw himself onto the bed, the after effects of the alcohol became stronger. It wasn't a stomachache but a burning sensation. Something wasn't right with his entire being. A long time ago, he knew that he had to work hard to catch up to that person since he wasn't smart and Yunhu was too outstanding. That excellence had nothing to do with his family background. Ever since he was young, Yunhu had received more praises than anyone else. His mother had always treated him like the son next door and educated him. At that time, he had been rather happy. His brother was outstanding because he was outstanding. But from now on, he probably wouldn't be able to catch up to him. Now, someone else had gone overseas with him. He had stayed here. That wasn't too bad. He still had things he had to do. Lin Feng curled up in his blanket, glancing at a spot in the corner of the room before closing his eyes. Qin family's house, second floor. When Bo Jiu woke up, there was no one beside her. The light on her phone was blinking. She swiped the screen and saw a missed call from Lin Feng. Bo Jiu stood up on one leg and dialed the number. It rang for a while but no one picked up. When the call ended, Bo Jiu frowned and sent him a message. "Team Beauty, what's wrong?" He replied instantly. "Nothing, I was just sleeping. I wanted to celebrate with you but I'm too tired now, I just want to sleep." Bo Jiu glanced at the reply and typed a few more words. "Let Almighty Yun celebrate with you." Lin Feng replied, "MMH, he only replied with an MMH. That didn't seem like someone's style." Bo Jiu had wanted to ask more. The door was suddenly pushed open. It was movie queen and behind her was the director who had wanted her to act in a movie. The director's eyes lit up when he saw Bo Jiu. "Mr. Fu, I would like to extend my sincere invitation to you to participate in our movie. Both your aura and the way you play are perfect for the hacker in the movie. I guarantee that you will accept our description of the character." Honestly, Bo Jiu was still in a daze. She had originally thought that the first thing she would see after waking up would be the Almighty's handsome face. He didn't see the Almighty, but he saw the director. Bo Jiu pressed down on her silver hair, wondering where the Almighty had gone. Movie queen and wanted to laugh. The child definitely didn't know what kind of state he was in. She looked slightly adorable, as if she wanted to find her ice-cold boy as soon as she woke up. The considerate movie queen and couldn't let them keep searching. She smiled and said, "Your brother Mo went to discuss business. Let's talk about the movie, what do you think?" Bo Jiu wanted to reject him. The international director spoke again, "Our filming location is in America. You can treat it as a free trip. Go and have a look first. We will depart 3 days later. Don't rush to give me an answer. Young man, think about it again." Bo Jiu's fingers stilled. Then she smiled. "There's no need to think about it, I've decided to accept it." MMH. The international director almost thought that he had heard wrongly. After all, the young man had always been very nonchalant about this matter. He could tell that the young man was not putting on a show. He really did not want to take on this movie, nor did he want to be popular. Why did he suddenly agree to it so readily? Bo Jiu had been thinking of ways to kidnap the Almighty. It wasn't practical to do it in China. The Almighty would probably know her identity before she could even make a move. With the Qin family's protection, it would be impossible to kidnap the Almighty. But it would be different in America. There would be a lot of room for maneuvering. At the very least, the security for a private jet wouldn't be as strict. That way, it would be easier to kidnap someone. More importantly, it would be easier for people to accept her going overseas in this manner. 3 days was enough for her to wrap things up. Fu Zhongyi's side had probably been whittled down. He was probably just left with some shares. During the shareholders' meeting the day after tomorrow, she would personally take back everything that belonged to He Honghua. Other than the shares, she would also take back her pride. After that, Bo Jiu could return to the Fifth Avenue with peace of mind. Filming in America wasn't just an excuse to kidnap the Almighty, it was also a buffer for He Honghua. Bo Jiu knew how much He Honghua doted on her. If she disappeared suddenly, He Honghua wouldn't be able to take it. She could choose not to tell anyone about her true identity. But when the time came, she had to tell He Honghua. Because in this world, there wasn't anyone more qualified than He Honghua to know the truth. But she had to wait until she returned to the Fifth Avenue. If not, He Honghua would be in danger. This was what Bo Jiu had always wanted to avoid. That was why she had to return to the Fifth Avenue. Her father was right about one thing. She couldn't have anyone close to her. It was too dangerous. The fake sea was just one side. There were more sides and more dangers. She couldn't let He Honghua be in such an environment. It wasn't just He Honghua, there was also Feng Shang, Yao Yao, Uncle Yin, Lin Feng, and Almighty Yun. Everyone who was related to her. Once her identity was exposed and the fake sea found out about her existence, the people around her might not be able to protect themselves. She had to catch the fake sea. But the battlefield wasn't here. It was somewhere else. Before that, it was important to plan properly. She had to kidnap the Almighty and treat his hand. Where's the script? Bo Jiu smiled. If it's a hacker movie, I'm interested. The international director relaxed. Come, I'll send it to you. Take a look, really. Trust me, after this movie is completed, I'll definitely make you the Prince Charming of the nation. Bojo caressed her nose and didn't reply. After all, she had never imagined that she would be filming in her lifetime. I don't have any acting skills, I won't have a lot of scenes, right? The international director, who had wanted to add scenes for the youngster, felt a little upset. No, but who said you don't have acting skills? The commercial you filmed was really good. Trust me, you will definitely be popular in the future. Chapter 1022. Listen to me, it's like this. The international director was really a drama addict. He started to speak in English when he was agitated. In the end, he seemed to have realized something, turning towards Bojo. I forgot to speak in Chinese, let me repeat myself. Bojo, movie queen, uncovered her mouth and giggled. After all, Jo's helpless expression of wanting to say something was too cute. She really wanted to reach out and pinch that fair and clean little face. Why couldn't he be her son? But it didn't matter, he would be considered part of her family once she married him. But she was worried about him. She had never seen her son so stubborn towards anyone. She wasn't sure if it was a good or bad thing. Outside the window, the night deepened by several degrees. In the study room of the Qin family's house. Qin Mo's gaze was so deep that there wasn't any warmth in it. You're saying that she has been preparing to leave the country recently? Yes, young master. The Special Forces soldier scrolled through the information on the computer, his voice deep. Besides, I realized that young Master Joe is very smart. Even though he is a high school student and seems to be playing esports on the surface, he is involved in many things. Even Fu Zhongyi, his father, was plotted against. Qin Mo's tone was calm. Taking back what was stolen is a courageous act. Fu Zhongyi deserves to be plotted against. The Special Forces soldier. Cough. How could he have forgotten that his young master was obsessed with a certain youngster? He should have phrased his words better. Young Master Joe's father isn't a good person. He even prepared some scandals regarding young Master Joe to be exposed during the shareholders' meeting so that he can hold the company in his hands. Qin Mo tapped his fingers on the table. What scandals? Photos of young Master Joe confessing to a man. The Special Forces soldier didn't want to talk about this since his boss wasn't in a good mood. As expected, the sound of a lighter came from the other end, followed by a cold voice. Who provided these photos? Invite them out for a chat. The Special Forces soldier knew that a chat with a young master wouldn't be friendly. What else did you find? Qin Mo wanted to smoke, but just as he was about to light it, he seemed to have recalled something. He frowned, tossing the silver lighter onto the table. The Special Forces soldier didn't understand. What else? No more. Qin Mo glanced up. Is she in contact with Hoshino? No. After all, from the start, boss had said this was the most important direction of investigation. The two of them don't seem to be related. No, it doesn't matter. The better they hid it, the more it meant that their relationship was not shallow. Hoshino should be the childhood sweetheart the guy mentioned. Chi Nemo had never cared so much about their childhood interactions. Especially when that guy was sleeping, he was still muttering the other party's name. Chi Mo's fingers froze, his gaze cold. Why is she preparing to leave the country? I've looked into it. Strangely, young Master Joe's mother didn't seem to know that young Master Joe was planning to go abroad. The last sentence was something the Special Forces soldier didn't say easily. Suddenly, Chi Mo's eyes darkened. Are you saying that even He Honghua doesn't know? Yes. The Special Forces soldier looked at the information again. Chi Mo's voice was deeper and colder than before. How many days does she intend to stay abroad? This. The Special Forces soldier hesitated for a moment. Young Master Joe didn't book a return ticket. She probably hasn't decided on her return date. Hasn't decided on her return date. When he heard this word, Chi Nemo felt as though all the warmth in his body had been sucked out. His voice reached the Special Forces soldier's ears through the phone, sending chills down his spine. It isn't that she didn't book a return ticket. She has no intention of coming back. The Special Forces soldier stilled. What did boss mean? Just as he was about to ask something, the other party hung up. He could vaguely hear the sound of something being flung out. The entire study room dimmed with the sound. Chi Mo's wrist was wrapped in a white bandage, which made him look different from his usual self. There was a coldness in his abstinence. Until now. That guy had never thought of having a future with him. Even at this stage, it was the same. Chi Nemo sat there, his hair falling down. His lips curved upwards, but there wasn't a hint of a smile. His wrist hurt. But he didn't seem to feel it. When Madame Zhang entered and saw the torn white cloth, she exclaimed, "Young master, your hand." Chi Nemo glanced over, reaching out to pull the white cloth back to its original position. Then he tightened his grip, his voice calm. "What's the matter?" Auntie Zhang sensed the chill on her young master's body, but she didn't know what happened. She walked over to pick up the phone and placed it on the table. "Madam asked me to tell young master that dinner is ready and young Master Joe is here." "I understand." Chi Nemo seemed a little distracted. He only said that he understood and didn't say anything else. Madame Zhang glanced over the table and paused. "Didn't young master place the mask on the coffee table outside? Why is there one here?" Chi Nemo frowned. "The coffee table outside?" "Yes, I just put it away for young master." "Didn't young master like this mask?" Madame Zhang was right, Chi Nemo really liked the mask. It wasn't because of anything special, but because it was a gift from someone. That was why he treasured it so much. Naturally, it couldn't be compared to the USB lighter. But basically, he would keep anything Bojo gave him, even if it was a black mask. But Chi Nemo remembered clearly that the mask had always been in his study room. He had never taken it out. So what exactly was the one Madame Zhang was looking at? Chi Nemo narrowed his eyes. "Madame Zhang, where did you keep the mask?" "It's at the coffee table." "Young master didn't take it." Madame Zhang was puzzled. Chi Nemo had already stood up. He walked towards the direction of the living room and stopped by the coffee table. His figure was very slender. Even though his wrist was still wrapped in bandages, the whiter his skin was, the more Chi Nemo looked like a sick prince. He was so handsome that it made people feel pity for him. "Here?" Chi Nemo asked Madame Zhang. Madame Zhang nodded. In the small compartment under the coffee table. Chi Nemo reached out and pulled open the secret compartment. His slender fingers moved and a mask appeared in his palm. Chapter 10:23. It was indeed the same. The material, brand, and color were exactly the same. But the one that Qin Mo took out was a gift from someone. The one that Madame Zhang found was taken from Zi's face when he had fought with Zi that day. Qin Mo never believed in coincidences. The conjecture that was buried deep in his heart seemed to have been confirmed. It was like the tip of the iceberg had been split open. It was a familiar style of doing things. It was the same hacking skills. Even though she had toned it down, the first time he had met her in the game, the reason he had noticed her was because her methods were similar to Z. And, the way she stood in the darkness, her hands stained with blood but her eyes glowing. The determination to give some people a voice regardless of everything. The arrogant look that didn't care about anyone. The dazzling disguise technique. The feeling that she gave people was gentle, but when she lowered her eyes, there was a cunning smile on her face. All of these were Zi's unique traits. He knew, but he didn't want to admit that she was Z. Qin Mo stood there, his fingers tightening around the black mask in his hands. Madame Zhang didn't know what had happened. But this was the first time she saw her young master like this. There were obvious fluctuations in his emotions. His eyes started to shake violently. She didn't know what was going on. At this moment, the three people upstairs finished discussing the script and walked down. Bojio's legs were long and she walked in front. Ever since she woke up, she had been looking for her brother Mo. When she saw the tall and slender figure, her eyes lit up. She smiled and called out, "Brother Mo." In that instant, the international director had an illusion. Why did it feel like there was a tail behind the youngster? The youngster had always given him the impression that she was evil, untamed and hard to control, or mysterious with a layer of fog in her smile. But it had never been like this. How should he describe it? Little loyal dog. This must be his illusion. However, this illusion didn't fade as time passed. The silver-haired youngster walked towards the man without a word. Her clear voice carried other emotions. "Brother Mo, what are you looking at?" Auntie Zhang wanted to say something. Qin Mo glanced over and pushed the drawer inwards. Instantly, there was nothing in his hands. When he straightened his back, there wasn't a hint of emotion on his face. Nothing. Bojio arched a brow but didn't continue asking. The moment she saw his handsome face, Bojio only had one thought left in her mind. She was going to kidnap him and the Almighty would definitely be furious. However, she also knew how to coax people. When they reached the main house, she would ask Grandfather Butler to make more delicious food for the Almighty. She remembered that her pet loved to read since he was young. Before she went back, she would ask the butler to buy some books. Otherwise, her place would indeed lack a cultural atmosphere. Also, freshly ground coffee. She knew how to do that. However, the Almighty's skills were a problem. In order to avoid any unpleasantness between the two people, she had to prepare some medicine. The more Bojio thought about it, the harder it was to please the Almighty. Unlike her, she loved money. Even the Almighty couldn't be bought with money. Bojio wouldn't do the same stupid thing she had done when she was younger. He wanted to see if there was anything that the Almighty liked. Bojio thought about it seriously. Qin Mo glanced at her. He didn't mention the mask and pretended as though nothing had happened. He reached out and pulled the youngster over. He tidied the youngster's hair and asked calmly, "Are you hungry?" Bojio smiled again. The international director was dumbfounded. He glanced at Movie Queenan, as though saying, "You're not going to do anything about it." Movie Queenan smiled elegantly, explaining everything. The international director understood and watched the interaction between the two of them. The youngster really liked to follow behind the man. She was even saying things like, "Brother Mo, I want to eat meat. I've been craving meat recently. I don't know why, but after some thought, I think it's because my body is growing and I need meat." Chi Nemo glanced over, maintaining a distance between them. "When aren't you craving meat? You even use your body to hide your nature." The youngster smiled. She didn't say a word and dangled a lollipop. "Make it spicy. It's better with spicy beef." Chi Nemo had walked into the kitchen and was mixing the ingredients. The international director was shocked. He had known his good friend's son since young. He had always been polite, but not everyone could get close to him. At that time, it wasn't that he hadn't thought of poaching Chi away. But Chi Nemo had only replied, "I'm not interested in acting, but I'm interested in film investments. I can work with you in this aspect." At that time, Chi Nemo had been 17. He had been able to control the entire scene at such a young age. It seemed to have something to do with his background, but at the same time, he was really noble. He would never have imagined that he would be mixing ingredients for someone. When Chi Nemo picked up the chopsticks, he glanced at the youngster again. His gaze was unreadable. Bo Jiao was confused. She blinked, the tear mole at the corner of her eye glowing brightly. Chi Nemo dipped the chopsticks into the seasoning in the wooden bowl and brought it to the youngster's lips naturally. Bo Jiao leaned over and tasted it. She narrowed her eyes like a cat. "Delicious." But after saying that, Bo Jiao realized that the way she was holding onto the Almighty's wrist and tasting his food seemed a little too intimate. She paused and turned towards Movie Queen and Movie Queenin, and the director had already sat down and were chatting. They probably weren't paying attention to them. Bo Jiao took a second bite. She couldn't waste it. Chi Nemo watched as the youngster stuck her tongue out, his gaze deepening. But this time, he didn't do anything. He placed the bowl down and rejected the intimacy. His voice was calm. "I'm going to make a call. Eat first, don't eat meat all the time. I'll get Madame Zhang to keep an eye on you. If you don't have any vegetables, do another physics test." Bo Jiao. The Almighty always used physics to threaten her. It wasn't cute. Forget it, the Almighty was handsome and everything he said was right. But was she thinking too much? Why did she feel that the Almighty today was indescribably estranged from his usual self? It was subtle, as though there was a layer of fog between them. It wasn't real. Chapter 1024. Chi Nemo returned to the study room. The first thing he did was to look at the information he had gotten previously. It was clearly written that the youngster had never been to America and it was impossible for her to appear on Fifth Avenue. But the contact at the plaza that day, Chi Nemo was certain that it was Z and that she wasn't an imposter. But how could he explain the difference in their ages and backgrounds? Chi Nemo swiped his phone and made a call. No one expected that the person he called was Xiao Jing. Xiao Jing was still wearing Xiangnan's uniform and was doing an interview with Luo Luo. Before the results of the competition were out, all the media assumed that Xiangnan would represent China in the Asian Cup. But now that Supreme Alliance was the winner, it was inevitable that they would encounter such problems. After Xiao Jing replied, his phone rang. The camera swept across his screen. When he saw Qin Mo's name, the interviewer was stunned. What was going on? Didn't they say that Qin Mo and Xiao Jing couldn't get along? Could it be that the rumors online were true? These two almighties were a love-hate couple? Luo Luo already knew that the two of them were in contact privately. She laughed lightly. It's a call from the official couple. Hurry up and pick it up. I'll be here. Xiao Jing didn't bother about his teammates' words. His demeanor was extremely important at this moment. He stood up and said, "Excuse me." Then he walked to the corner and picked up the call. "Hello. The question I asked you the other time." Chi Nemo didn't beat around the bush. The side of his face was sharp from the light. His tone was calm. "Other than the appearance of a second personality, there is another possibility." "What is it?" Xiao Jing didn't expect him to bring up the past. He paused. "The other possibility is more ridiculous. You might not believe it." Qin Mo didn't speak. It was obvious that he was waiting for his answer. Xiao Jing spat out 4 words. "Soul exchange. Soul call." Qin Mo froze. He frowned subconsciously and laughed. "You know, I don't believe in such things." Xiao Jing also knew that this was very hard to believe. "My research topic involves this aspect." It sounds a little unbelievable, but as a research topic, once humans reach a point of convergence under the influence of a certain magnetic field, when one of them loses his ability to think, the other person's memory will exist in this body under the influence of some unknown factors. In other words, the original owner will no longer exist and become another person. This is because what a person looks like is determined by their memory. As for why there will be memory rebirth, I don't think it's clear. After all, this is just a proposal, and such a proposal is too absurd. There are extreme flaws in some aspects, which means that it can't be verified as scientific. But if there really is a person who suddenly becomes different from before, not only in personality but also in behavior and preferences, it's either the appearance of a second personality or the reconstruction of memories. Qi Nemo listened to the words on the other end of the line. He knew very well how much Xiao Jing had studied these things, and he also knew that Xiao Jing was making a rational analysis. In reality, the youngster he knew didn't fit the evaluation of this person by the outside world. He was infatuated, pursued, good for nothing, liked to throw money around, was like a nouveau riche, had a weak personality, and was like a sissy. This was the former young Master Fu. Chapter 1025. It wasn't just that these things no longer existed. According to the information they had gathered, there were many things that were different from the previous young Master Fu. For example, someone who never liked to play online games suddenly became the FC King of Zone C. That kind of hand speed and skill wasn't something that could be learned in a day or two. Another example would be this person's academic performance. In the past, it could be said that it was a tragic sight, unlike now. Other than being weak in physics, everything else was surprisingly good, especially in the subject of English. Also, this person could speak Tokyo's local language in addition to English. Moreover, her beautiful skills were completely different from before. In fact, a certain someone's attitude towards him was very different from before. Even though he wasn't familiar with the person beside him, with Jiang's was reminder, he knew that someone used to be crazily infatuated with him and did everything to get him. Not only that, but she also seemed to have good feelings towards other people. He liked to treat people at nightclubs. Even if he spent money like that, his classmates didn't really like him because of his personality. Because there was nothing to like about the former young master of the Fu family. Even his attitude towards He Honghua was expressed in a different way. There was a business gathering. From afar, she could see that the young master of the Fu family saying nasty words in front of so many people. He was despising He Honghua, causing her to be unable to even lift her head. The current person. When he treated He Honghua, he was extremely gentle. Soul exchange. Qin Mo's eyes dimmed and he said, "I understand, I owe you a favor this time. As for what we said today, keep it a secret." "You're welcome. Invest more money in my research project." Xiao Jing's tone didn't change at all. Of course, young Master Xiao didn't lack money. Qin Mo replied and didn't say anything else. Xiao Jing added, Supreme Alliance has to compete in the Asian Cup. How's your hand? It's still being treated. Qin Mo suddenly stopped speaking. When he glanced up, he could clearly sense that there was someone behind him. Qin Mo's fingers paused. I have something on, I'll hang up first. With that, Qin Mo stood there without turning his head. What are you doing, hiding there so sneakily? Have I been discovered? She had just entered. Sometimes, the Almighty could be quite troublesome when he was smart. Bo Jiu chuckled. She stepped forward and changed the topic. There's too little sauce, it's not enough. Something unknown surged in Qin Mo's eyes. Then, he walked towards the youngster. Qin Mo's expression didn't change at all. Hence, the Almighty's gaze on her made her skin crawl. But she didn't know why. It was an indescribable indifference. However, there was something more to it than indifference. Bo Jiu tried to figure out what was wrong with her. In the end, he couldn't figure it out. Qin Mo stuffed one hand into his trouser pocket and kept his phone. He lowered his lids to look at the youngster's bright eyes when she smiled. No wonder her mood changed when she heard him call her little Fujiu. So, the person who lived in this shell had the surname Bo Z this time. Chapter 1026. Bo Jiu felt that the Almighty's danger level was extremely high today. Just as she was about to say something, someone lifted her chin. Her chin was lifted. At first, she didn't know what Qin Mo was going to do. But when his finger brushed past the corner of her lips, there was a slight warmth as he rubbed against it. That was when Bo Jiu realized that the Almighty was wiping her mouth. It was as though a gust of wind had blown over. Her surroundings were filled with his familiar scent. It was thicker than the sandalwood in the room. The scent of mint and tobacco penetrated her heart. It was hard to escape. How much food did you secretly eat? You're so dirty. His voice was already pleasant to listen to, and coupled with this kind of smiling words, it sounded even more pleasant. It was a rare sight. Bo Jiu didn't even look up when a kiss landed on her lips. It was slightly cold, but in such a summer day, it was comforting to touch. It was as though the distance she had felt before was just an illusion. Bo Jiu didn't understand. Her eyes were filled with doubt. However, Qin Mo pressed her against the door frame. His originally light kiss gradually changed, as though he wanted to swallow her whole into his stomach. Even his breath was different from usual. The kiss made both of their pulse beat differently than before. The tip of his tongue was numb from the sucking, and his heartbeat was much faster than before. His mind was completely blank, and his thoughts were sucked away. Qin Mo's hand was on her waist from behind. Bo Jiu's t-shirt was half opened, her porcelain white waist was exposed. Their position was indescribably intimate. Brother Mo. Bo Jiu tilted her head, wanting him to stop. Indeed, Qin Mo stopped. His lips curled up, and his breath landed beside her ear. It was a little unstable and low. Why? Don't you like it? That handsome face that was stained with love made him look like a demon from a cult. His pitch-black hair was also softer than usual, and that tone of his. Bo Jiu narrowed her eyes and muttered, "Don't use your beauty to tempt me." Qin Mo paused. Then he smiled, reaching out to help the youngster tidy her clothes. He retracted his hand like a gentleman. "Let's go eat." Bo Jiu replied. She watched as he walked away. Something seemed amiss that she hadn't noticed. But she couldn't explain it. The two of them walked out of the study one after another. At this moment, the international director and movie queen were almost done talking. He asked Bo Jio which day she was planning to fly over so that someone could make arrangements. Chin Mo's hand, which was swirling the red wine glass, paused. He asked casually, "Fly over?" Movie queen chuckled with a hint of glee. "Jio just agreed to our production team's invitation to fly to America with me. Let me tell you, Jio is doing this willingly. As the captain, don't play your capitalist game and forbid Jio from going here or there." Hearing this, Chin Mo's eyes darkened, the warmth in his body disappeared, his voice faint. "She isn't suited to go abroad. Not suitable to go abroad." Movie queen shook her head. "Son, your excuse isn't convincing at all." Chin Mo put down his chopsticks and opened his mouth. "Brother Mo, do you want to go with me? They said that the environment there isn't bad. It should be helpful for your hand's treatment. Let him tag along." This was something Chin Mo hadn't considered. After all, the person standing in front of him wasn't the young Master Fu but a new soul. From the information he had, she had been planning to go abroad, probably because she was worried that he would guess something. A certain someone was hiding too many secrets. The biggest one was probably the one he had just found out about. She wanted him to tag along because she was certain that he wouldn't be able to find out. That was why she was so daring to make a move under his nose. Chin Mo raised his wine glass and took a sip. "When are we going?" 3 days later. Bo Jio felt that the first step of her kidnapping was about to be completed. "Hence," she added, "I asked the director and he said that there aren't many scenes, it shouldn't take long." Bo Jio replied naturally, "Once we're done, we can walk around the area. That way, it would be easier to kidnap someone." Bo Jio supported the side of her face, replying to Chin Mo, throwing out a bait. "I have never gone overseas with Brother Mo, this is a good chance." Chin Mo chuckled. Indeed, he had never gone overseas alone with a certain someone. But at this moment, Chin Mo was pondering over something else. For example, why was she so insistent on getting him to tag along? This time. What exactly did she want? Chin Mo's long fingers tapped against the edge of the glass, seemingly in deep thought. After a moment, he replied, "All right." He watched as Bo Jio's eyes lit up, like a little fox that had succeeded in her scheme. His lips lifted. "But I have a condition." She had to pay a price to kidnap the Almighty. Bo Jio understood this logic. She held her chin and smiled lazily. "Brother Mo, tell me, what is it?" "You have to stay at my place for the 3 days before you leave." Chin Mo watched her. Bo Jio paused. This was a difficult request. If she stayed here, it wouldn't be easy to contact Hoshino. However, it was not that there was no solution. Tomorrow was the Fu Group's shareholders' meeting. The Almighty wouldn't be suspicious if she went out. When she realized that movie queen and the others were looking at her, Bo Jio seemed to remember something. When she agreed, she added, "Brother Mo's hand isn't convenient. Do you want me to be a free nurse?" "Sure." Chin Mo knew why Bo Jio had said that. He swept the youngster a glance. A nurse who sleeps by herself and doesn't care about the patient. "I just got started, I'll get better in the future." Bo Jio laughed heartily, not forgetting to lower her head to eat the rice in her bowl. Chin Mo watched the youngster beside him. She was exceptionally obedient during meals. When she lowered her head, she would be fluffy. When she lifted her head, she would definitely be craving for a particular dish. She was adorable no matter how he looked at her. No matter how accurate Chin Mo's analysis of Z. He had never thought about it. In reality, when the Real Z appeared in front of him, she would be like this. He recalled the first time they fought on the Fifth Avenue. That arrogant youngster, who didn't seem to diminish even when she was surrounded by the police, was right beside his hand. As long as he stretched his hand out, he would be able to touch her fluffy head. The corners of Chin Mo's lips curled up slightly. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.